Today, we are going to talk about worker cooperatives because someone requested in a YouTube comment that I look at either Richard Wolff or Ben Burgess and their discussions on worker co-ops. So I'm going to bring this bad boy up. It's a guy whom some have called a brilliant economist, Richard Wolff, who is a Marxist economist. And that's not hyperbole. That's not a Fox News talking point. This isn't something I got from a boomer meme. He calls himself a Marxist economist. Look at the title: Marxist Economic Theory Easily Explained with Richard Wolff. This guy is a fan of Karl Marx. Now, we're starting off around the 6-minute mark because that's when he gets going on worker co-ops. But to add context to this, the first 6 minutes, Richard Wolff tries to ease the blow of communism. He talks about how during World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union were friends, that there were stamps being sold in the United States, U.S. postage stamps, where it was Uncle Sam and Uncle Joe shaking hands and standing together. So how could it be that bad? How can Marxism be that bad? Karl Marx, he says, was a really good economist.
Nigga, get the fuck out of here.
He had some really good criticisms of capitalism, but a reason why I think people like Richard Wolff and Ben Burgess, I think a reason why they offer worker co-ops as an alternative to Karl Marx's solutions to capitalism and class warfare is because they're trying to distinguish themselves from the ugly, bloody history of communism, like the Soviet Union and North Korea and Cambodia and all the rest, Maoist China. Because those were all bloody revolutions where the revolutionaries established a dictatorship of the proletariat and tried to abolish private property by collectivizing farms and industry. Led to a lot of misery and purges and famine. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of you guys know about the history of communism. So I suspect that people like Richard Wolff, they bring up this worker co-op talking point to distinguish themselves. Like, we don't want the bloody revolutions. We don't want a dictatorship. We just want to democratize the workplace.
How about new?
So let's check out what Richard Wolff has to say.
Amusing, but you don't take that seriously. She doesn't really know what's going to happen to you next month. So he didn't do much. So you have to kind of read between the lines and tease it out, and this is what it would look like. His argument is we have an economic system, this capitalist system, that puts a very
Talking about Karl Marx, by the way.
small number of us in the driver's seat.
It's a small number of us in the driver's seat. Now, again, capitalism is a society that respects individual rights and property rights, where government's only function is the protection of individual rights and property rights. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property and happiness. In other words, capitalism gives you your own driver's seat, and then you got to figure out what to do with it. But Richard Wolff says that only a few people are in the driver's seat.
If you look at the percentage of people who own shares of stock in America, you get a very quick understanding. 1% of shareholders own 2/3 of all the stock.
Oh, no.
So if you're looking at who owns American business, it's the 1% that everybody's talking about.
It's the 1%. You hear this a lot from people like Bolshevik Bernie Sanders and all the other progressives and our friends on the so-called left. But again, it's worth contextualizing. The 1% in America, that's 3 million people. Because I feel like a lot of times people throw out 1% to get you thinking in your mind that it's just a small group of people, maybe a few dozen people, maybe a few hundred people at most, and they're just in a back smoke-filled shadowy room somewhere looking to scheme you, looking for ways to exploit workers, looking for rivers to dump toxic waste into, looking for politicians to put in their back pocket, looking for strings to pull. But it's 3 million people. Telling me that 3 million people all happen to be like in some back room somewhere scheming. And that's a lot of people. I mean, I also add that, I don't know if you guys know this, the The top 1% has grown by over 500,000 people, I believe, since 1990. You might be thinking, well, it's probably because of some economic conditions that allow them to grow. No, it's just by mere fact that the population of the country grew from 250 million to 300 million because 1% is an arbitrary goalpost to set.
And
now, more on this topic. It's also worth contextualizing that we do live in a mixed economy with a welfare state and a regulatory state, and I would say that as a result of that, the stock market is incredibly corrupt and distorted, largely due to the Federal Reserve and other regulations on banking and finance and investment. And I would take it a step further and say that that Social Security is actually a huge distorts the stock market a lot. Because think about it. The Social Security discourages people from investing, especially in their retirement, especially long term. Social Security, people might think, why bother investing? Why save for retirement? Why bother by trying to study the stock market when, I'm just going to get checks when I turn 65. Why save? And on top of that, because, we have so many booms and busts every 10 to 20 years or whatever, especially with the Great Recession in the back of everyone's minds, a lot of people probably think, why put money away? Why work hard and put money away? Why save $10,000 over the next 2 to 5 years or 10 years? Why have $10,000 in the bank, in the stock market, when the companies I invest in could go belly up, when the stock market could crash and I could get wiped out? So that's also worth contextualizing. Now, even if we lived in a completely free market, this would probably still be a symptom. You'd probably still get a small amount of people controlling the shares of the stocks. And yeah, so he's going to elaborate on that. Let's check this out.
They're the ones who elect every year. That's how it works. The board of directors of every corporation.
Oh no, the owners of a corporation, they elect the people who are going to make decisions for the corporation. Yeah, that's how property rights work. When you open a business, when you own a business, you get to call the shots. It's like getting mad at someone for painting their car. How dare they paint their car? Well, they own the fucking car, okay? Someone opens a restaurant. Well, who is that restaurant owner think they are, deciding what's going to be on the menu? Well, it's their restaurant, Richard.
You get on the board of directors by being elected by the shareholders. If 1% of the people own 2/3 of the shares, that's who elects the boards of directors. Not grandma who has 10 shares of something, or not Uncle Harry who got 3 shares on his last birthday, but the people, the big bankers and the big wealthy folks who have it. So the argument is we have an economic system where all the basic decisions are made by the shareholders who own the company and the boards of directors they elect. They're the ones.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
Who decide what the company produces, what technology it uses, where the production takes place, and what to do with the profits. At the Christmas party, they thank everybody in the company for helping to make the profits. But everybody may have helped to produce them, but everybody doesn't get any say at all in what's done with them. That's in the hands of the board of directors and the shareholders. So
oh, no! The owners of the company get to decide what to do with the profits. I don't know about you guys at home. I don't know if you guys have ever bought stocks and invested your money. I don't know about you guys, but when I buy stocks in a company, the reason why I buy stock in companies is because I am looking, wait for this, folks, brace yourselves, this might surprise you, this might blow some minds. When I buy shares in a company, I am doing so with the hope of making money.
It's all about the money.
I'm hoping to get a return either through dividends or through an increase in value, through growth of the company and growth in value to a point where I might be able to sell the stock at a profit in the future. Richard Wolff seems pretty triggered by this fact. No one buys stock in a company to what? Create jobs? To make society, I mean, you probably would create jobs and make society a better place by investing in a company. But you're ultimately doing it for your own self-benefit, folks. At least I hope so.
Here then Marx makes a grin and says, do we really expect anything different? If you let the people in charge be a tiny minority, they're going to make the system work for them. They're not going to make the system work for the people who've been excluded. So his
You've been excluded. Well, look, they can buy shares in the company, or they can figure out a way to become rich. Like someone like Andrew Carnegie came to America poor, dirt poor as an immigrant, and became one of the richest people in American history. I think at one point he was the richest person in America. Started out dirt poor. Now, maybe not everyone can have the business acumen and the ethic and the genius of someone like Andrew Carnegie. Not everyone has to. Not everyone has to be a captain of industry. Not everyone has to be a CEO. Not everyone has to be Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos. But largely, you would still be in control of your own life.
answer is don't exclude them. And if you want the simple English, worker co-ops.
Here we go, worker co-ops.
Business organized in a radically different way. All the people in a business live with the decisions that are made there. And if they all have to live with the decisions, they should all participate. It's the same logic as runs our communities. We say a mayor can't
Here we go.
make those important decisions that a mayor or a city council or a president, for that matter, makes without our having some say in voting. Well, then the same logic, if you apply it to the workplace, would be how can you let 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 or 12 members of the board of directors make a decision, close a plant, move it to China, or any one of the other decisions they make, impacting everybody else, and everybody else has no say at all? That's not democracy. And if,
Yeah, it's not.
you know, I push it as follows. If we believe in democracy as a nation, which we claim so often we do,
See, so this is how he tries to cash in on people thinking that America is a democracy, which again, we are a constitutional republic that has democratic elements, as we should. Democratic elements. But again, you're not allowed to vote on what people are allowed to say and not say. You're not allowed to vote on whether or not I'm allowed to keep and bear arms. So you're not allowed to vote me into slavery. So yeah, there are some things that you just can't democratically decide. And again, the founding fathers knew this. They were opposed to pure democracy. But Richard Wolff, he's trying to cash in on people who think, oh yeah, you know, if we have democracy, we vote for our mayors and governors and presidents and senators and congresspeople and local judges. Why shouldn't we vote on who our boss is?
in the first place we should have put it is where we work. 5 out of 7 days, the adult human being in America, most of us go to work. If democracy is valuable, put it into play where we work. It's at least as important as where we live. Where we live, we supposedly have it. We don't have it where we work. And my guess is our economy would work a lot different.
It sure would be a lot different. Probably be a lot worse. Especially if you brought it on by force.
If the people were in charge, rather than having it be...
Which is what he wants. He wants it to happen through legislation, which he admits later. We're not going to get to that, though.
in the hands of a very small number of people who, if I'm noticing correctly, I'm a professor of economics, I'm supposed to know this, the system's working...
He's a professor of economics, guys. He's an authority on the matter.
really well for them.
Yes.
Do, right?
It's going great for the people who own stock.
All right.
For the owner class, it's going very good.
Okay, so there you have it. Richard Wolff, worker co-ops. He asks, you know, we vote on our politicians. We vote on mayors and governors and judges and presidents. Why don't we get a say in how? Why don't we bring democracy to the workplace? We spend most of our day at the workplace, 8 to 10 hours a day, 4 to 7 days a week. Why don't we expand democracy to the workplace? Well, because merely accepting employment at a company does not suddenly entitle you to ownership of that company. And I think people like Richard Wolff and Ben Burgess, who the person who requested this again, mentioned Ben Burgess amongst this topic. I think people like this, they take for granted that someone had to figure out how to bring a business, especially a big business, into existence and make it profitable. Businesses like Walmart and McDonald's and Uber and Disney, they were not just lying around in a void and it just happened to be taken over by some greedy CEO who was looking to make money and exploit people. No, these businesses were created by people who had the creative genius and who were willing to take the risks necessary and put in the effort necessary to bring them into existence and figure out a way to make them profitable and make them grow. Now, goons like Richard Wolff, they might know this, and they might take this fact for granted, or they might know that they might know that they're full of shit, and they're counting on you to just go along with it and take it for granted. But either way, this notion that someone like a Walt Disney, after spending decades of his life drawing pictures, making cartoons, opening his own studio, making feature-length animated films to the point where he was so rich that he could open theme parks based on his animation studios and all the intellectual property that goes along with it. This notion that Walt Disney suddenly needs to get permission from ticket scanners and popcorn vendors at Disneyland to make decisions like whether or not to buy the rights to Winnie the Pooh or buy the rights to Star Wars. This notion is absolutely ridiculous. Now, as far as comparing it to government officials, there is a crucial difference between electing people who are going to be in charge of an institution with a monopoly on the retaliatory use of force and voting away someone's private property rights. Because, someone in government, like a mayor or a city council person or a senator, they might violate your rights if you don't have the democratic power to vote them out and keep them in check. They might impose taxes on you that you don't like. They might try to, vote on legislation that takes away your religious liberty. They might vote in blasphemy laws. They might make it illegal for you to consume alcohol or whatever. So yeah, you should have the right to vote them out, to say, you know what, you've become a corrupt scumbag, you've made my life worse with your bullshit laws, and so this is the only way I have of getting you out. I'm going to vote your ass out. But in a free market, accepting employment does not entitle you to ownership over someone else's property. Now, I've seen Destiny point out a potential flaw with this idea with worker co-ops. One notable example, he said, what if you have bigoted workers in the workplace and they happen to dominate, they happen to be the majority of the workforce? You might have a situation where you might have a bigoted workforce that decides that they don't want to hire minorities or women or homosexuals or whatnot, or any minorities that are on the staff that are in the workforce. They could be voted out. Like, hey, let's fire that guy over there. We don't want any Asians in our workforce. We don't want any we don't want any of them people in our factories. But even something as innocuous as accepting a job at, say, McDonald's and then being able to vote on what's on the menu, even that is an incredible injustice because it's not your business. When you accept a job at a business, you are selling your labor as a free agent. And, when you apply the standard, try to apply the standard to private contracting work. Say that you are, that there's a homeowner that's hiring you and two other independent contractors to paint their house. And it's just a one-day job, and you guys are going to be painting 3 different rooms. Now, do you guys suddenly get together and form a union and then say, we're going to democratize this workplace? We're going to vote on what color paint we're going to use in the rooms. We're going to vote on whether or not the owner of this house should supply us with safety goggles. We're gonna get together and bargain for higher wages. Now, you might have the right to use that tactic, and the owner of the house would have every right to say, fuck off. I'm not hiring you guys. You guys are being unreasonable. I'll hire some other independent contractors. Because after all, it's the same standard. You're doing work on their property in exchange for money. Does that suddenly give you and the other contractors the right to again, decide on stuff? No. It's not your property. Nobody is owed a job or a certain standard of living just because they merely exist. And accepting a job at a place, accepting a job does not give you a right to your employer's property.